that faulted, and that was the major power grid in the Northeast. Now
then we had the other power failure in '77, which affected the New York City
That
area.
was just New York City, but this is the major power grid for the entire Northeast and Eastern Canada.
Here, pictures here.
Yeah. Is that from the? That's from
1977.
1977 blackout. But the one in the mid '60s. Now people had a little sense of panic with that one too. At the very start, it was the height of the Cold War. So many reports it was an Armageddon, and they didn't know what was going on. But what it turned out to be was this power grid that affects the Northeast and Canada. That was simply the problem.
Yeah, and in a light moment, the mayor even today was saying, where were you when the lights went out, and saying that hopefully there won't be any serious problems this time. Thank you, John.
We have on the phone with us Emma Burns, PSE&G, to give us a report on how the power situation is in New Jersey. Good afternoon, Ms. Burns. What can you tell us?
How are you? Well, the good news is that portions of our system, in fact, are coming back into service.
Continue. That's good news.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Why don't you get a little more? We did hear from the mayor a short time ago, and he was talking about power being restored to the north and to the west from various facilities. Tell us a little bit more about that, Emma. Which areas are directly affected, and information you have that would really be helpful to people who are listening to us. Ms. Burns, are you there?
Yes, more than half of our customers, in fact, of our 2 million customers, were unaffected. And so some of our customers now, in fact, are beginning to back in isolated pockets. There to be any damage to our transmission system. So as the system is able to absorb the power as it begins to return, well, we will return customers in a cascade fashion.
I think we're losing a little bit of this transmission, Ms. Burns. We sort of get an intermittent signal from you. You still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I wanted you to finish. You were breaking up a little bit. Why don't you just repeat that last part for us again?
And as our system is able to absorb the power as it comes back into the system, we will turn additional communities to normal power.
All right, Emma Burns, PSE&G, optimism, encouraging news as parts of the power go on into the areas served by public service, electric and gas.
Dane, I wanted to mention this information that we have. University Hospital in Newark is asking for the public's help in providing supplies during this outage. They're asking for portable generators, for extension cords, batteries, and battery-powered radios. Again, to repeat, University Hospital in Newark is asking for your help in providing supplies at this time, and they're asking for portable generators. If you have a portable generator, extension cords, batteries, and battery-powered radios. Now, you're asked to bring all of those items to the doctor's office.
In Erie, Pennsylvania, rolling blackouts have caused a chaotic rush hour. Even Governor Ed Rendell visiting the city was stranded in traffic. In Cleveland, University Hospital was operating in disaster mode. No staff could leave. A nurse in the labor room said they were without air conditioning and, quote, our laboring moms are suffering. In Hartford, Connecticut, power has been flashing in and out. 40 trains in the state are stranded between stations. Akron, Ohio is without power, and 4 nuclear plants in Ohio and New York have been shut down. Every prison in New York State reported a loss of power and switched to backup generators. Air travel in the Northeast has ground to a halt, causing disruptions across the country. Airports in New York, Cleveland, Detroit, Ottawa, and Toronto have grounded flights, causing a snowball effect of delays. The FAA says air traffic control centers are still in business, some on backup diesel generators. The problem is with electricity out at some airports, X-ray machines and scanners aren't working, and it's impossible for screeners to check passengers. Finally, the New York Stock Exchange managed to shut down before the blackout, but officials could not say whether the markets will open normally tomorrow. Dan?
Anthony Mason, thanks. Let's talk about telephones. Cell phone systems got overloaded. They weren't knocked out, they got overloaded, but landlines seem to work pretty well.
They have been working pretty well, Dan.
Thanks, Anthony. The federal government, including the Department of Homeland Security, was taken by surprise by this. The government moved immediately into action, among other things, to try to determine what was behind the blackout. Was it terrorism? The answer appears to be now clearly no. But for that part of the story, we go to Washington and CBS News correspondent Cheryl Atkinson. Cheryl?
Well, here in D.C., Dan, you can imagine officials were watching carefully, waiting, wondering two things, of course. First of all, what caused the outage in other places, and secondly, was something like that going to also happen here? It didn't, and within about an hour and a half of the blackout, a senior White House administration official had issued a statement saying that the outage was a result of a power grid failure and not terrorism. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security quickly concurred, and so there was no change in the national security alert level. It remains as it was before, which is yellow or elevated. There was a sense of calm, not urgency from the start, from the White House personnel traveling with President Bush. He's on a trip out in California. And power went out after the markets closed, so the Treasury Department here in Washington said that the shutdown of the market participants and the exchanges was very orderly and no data was lost. The New York Stock Exchange says it will open tomorrow morning. We don't have word yet on the other markets. But in D.C., I guess you could say a big sigh of relief, not only to have not been affected by the outages here, but also to know that the terrorism was not at any root cause of this. Dan?
Cheryl Axelson reporting live from our Washington Bureau, emphasizing the power is on in Washington, D.C. Now, with the power out in a wide section of the upper Northeast United States, centered, if you will, basically around New York City and around the Great Lakes, the only way for most people to get around in the area turns out to be on foot. CBS News correspondent Mika Brzezinski is on the sidewalks of New York. Mika?
Well, Dan, at first it's safe to say there was a wave of fear that swept over the crowds that poured out into the street when this first happened. It went from information center of the world to no phone service, no computers, no cell phones, and very little options in terms of getting around. In fact, we spoke to some people who were stuck in the subway when the lights went out.
The next thing you know, we had to get out the train, walk through the tunnel and all that. And then no cabs want to stop us. They don't want to take us uptown. So I guess we just stuck here.
I think it's very scary for the city. It's very congested. No lights are going on, and the traffic is going on. It's very dangerous. We really don't know what's going on.
Could be worse.
In fact, the entire city is really jammed at this point. Subway service is out. Bridges and tunnels are jammed. Some bridges are being used only as a pedestrian walkway. Hours into this situation, Dan, the mood has moved from anxiety, mass anxiety, to massive inconvenience. The streets are filled with thousands of people. The only way to get around is through the express bus service, and of course there's not enough of them to accommodate all the people who need to get where they need to go. Now, at this point, the concern is what happens tonight if this situation prolongs. The concern, of course, will be looting, widespread looting, and crowd control. But so far, so good right now. People are really listening to what authorities have to say. They're just trying to get home or to get to a place where they can hang out for a few hours till this all calms down. One guy, Dan, just yelled from his car to me, "Tell my wife I'll be home just a little bit late tonight." So people are trying to take it with a good mood here at this point, trying to get through this very difficult commute. Dan.
Mika Brzezinski reporting live from near Columbus Circle here in New York City. Now, we haven't heard from President Bush since this situation started, and the reason is he's on a trip to California. He spoke to some Marines, naval officers, Navy personnel, and Coast Guard people this afternoon, and is scheduled to attend a big fundraiser in California tonight, so that's the reason he hasn't been in Washington. But one of our White House correspondents, Bill Plant, is traveling with the President in California and is now up with the report. Bill?
Well, Dan, the president was eating lunch with some of the troops when the blackout hit, and he didn't hear about it until a little bit after that. The White House, of course, initially very concerned to know whether this was a terrorist act. And when they established fairly quickly that it did not appear to be, the president was informed, and they decided that Chief of Staff Andrew Card, who was back in Washington, would be the point man, a point of contact between the traveling White House out here on the West Coast and the people involved in New York.
Quite interesting, because the mayor made a very big deal of saying the bridges into the city are shut and the bridges out are open, but clearly we saw people coming into the city in cars.
Absolutely. That is absolutely happening, and that's a report that I've been hearing over and over again. And what I want to say is, you know, I think the main thing is if you don't have to go into the city, try and stay away. The bottom line, we need access. Emergency vehicles need to get in, and obviously as we bring you across the bridges, you're seeing not only are traffic moving through, but people are moving through on all sides of the bridges, inbound, outbound. People are going whichever way they need to go and whichever level of the bridge or whichever direction of the bridge they happen to wind up on. We're going to take you back down to the Brooklyn Bridge because that seems to be the best example of this. But you do see that traffic is moving in. Go ahead, Russ.
Okay, and don't go anywhere. It's just that we're getting word that Con Ed is making estimates about when power may be restored, and I believe he said 5 hours?
5 hours, 5 hours. The sun will set in an hour and 14 minutes, and that means that for almost 4 hours of that time, we will be in dark. So that's why people are going out of the city, I assume, to go home. And I assume, Shannon, you know, you've made a very good plea and obviously rational and wise for people not to come into the city unless they have to. But I assume that the few people we see going in right there inbound are people who have to get into the city, and I assume that that's what they're doing.
Well, yeah, we have to keep in mind that there are people who work in Brooklyn and live in Manhattan. You know, it's a reverse commute, but there are people that do it. So obviously there are people that need to get in. Probably wise to be walking in if you can. Now, at this point, you see only an emergency vehicle going across the Brooklyn Bridge. So my best guess, you know, the mayor's been saying that inbound bridges are closed. My guess is that they are closing them at any time that they deem it necessary. I mean, as you can see, now a large amount of people on this deck of the bridge.
Shannon, we're going to go to Ken Clapp, and I missed his exact title, but Mr. Clapp, first of all, are you there?
Hello, yes. Ken Clapp, New York Independent System Operator.
And basically the reason that we need to talk to you is because you're in charge of the power grid?
Correct. Our organization controls the power grid for New York State, and we also run the wholesale energy market.
All right. Now, having said that, when's the power coming back on?
Well, right now, our primary concern is restoration of the system. About two-thirds of New York State are out of service right now. We're not sure of the cause. However, we have other people that are looking into that. But again, as I spoke before, we're trying to bring up the system, and that's takes a little bit of time.
Do you know, Mr. Clapp, what happened?
No, we don't. At this point, we don't know what caused. We're part of an elaborate grid. Our grid extends all the way to the Rocky Mountains and as far south as Florida. It appears that the interruptions are from Ohio east. Many of the systems in the Northeast were affected, including the provinces of Ontario and I believe also Quebec.
Now
why is it that some pockets are coming back on? What's happening with some grids? That
well, what happens when the system breaks apart, some places we call island off from the system and stay up. For example, locally in the Albany area, we did have power on for a while and lost it again later on. That's just a characteristic of when this type of thing happens.
We got word just a moment ago that within 5 hours there is the possibility that everything could be up and running again. Do you concur with that estimate, or are you saying?
No, I can't speculate on that. It's a drawn out affair. We're working with the transmission owners in the state. There's 8 major transmission owners. We're on the phone with them, and likewise we're talking to neighboring systems. Power normally during a restoration period comes up gradually. The more that comes back online, the better, because it helps to stabilize the system. But right now, as far as I know, I don't think we've brought back too many people back into service.
Mr. Clapp, help our audience and those who have power, who are watching this broadcast, help our audience understand the engineering of this, because when we were growing up, when Roz and I were growing up, we wouldn't have had the New York Independent Systems Operators. We would have had 1 or 2 companies that controlled the power in various regions across the country.
Well, that's almost true. The grid has been interconnected, at least in New York, since 1965, the last major blackout that we had. And at that time, we set up an operation called the New York Power Pool, which operated the grid. As part of deregulation, the New York Independent System Operator took over control of the grid back in December of 1999. But the grid has been interconnected for a while. I mean, you just assume that the local company is it, but we
The information we want to pass on to you right now is the transportation issue, and it is, as you can well imagine, just not good at all. All the airports, all the major airports are shut down. Mass transit is, virtually non-existent. It is not moving right now, although there is some bus service in Manhattan. They have put on some extra buses there. And the ferry service is also moving. So that is good news. And a lot of people were trying to get to the ferries to get across the Hudson River over to New Jersey.
And of course, in case you're hearing noise around here, we don't have any air conditioner in our studio right now either. So you may hear some noise
kind of
from the
have
background.
an open door policy.
An open cooling area right now.
Let's go to Monica Pellegrini, who is live at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. Monica, I can only imagine, you at the ER there?
Harry, it's very loud right now, so I can barely hear you. But let me, set the scene. I think a lot of people are just kind of milling around as they are doing all up and down the East Coast, as we understand it. We've heard stories of people climbing through subway cars to get out of the subway, coming out just covered with dirt. We talked to one man stuck in an elevator who seemed rather calm and rather cool and collected about the whole thing, sitting patiently, waiting to get out of the elevator. The hospital here is up and running. They're not letting any visitors in. They've stopped operations right now, and they're operating on an
And I think we may be losing Monica and losing the sound.
Yeah. No, wait. No. Okay,
Going
Monica.
back and forth.
Well, we'll go back to Monica in just a minute because I'm sure she had some important information to tell us and to talk to that gentleman that she was just about to talk to.
Did you notice that people were taking our advice? There was one man walking by with an ice cream cone. Another had 2 cups of whatever, trying to cool off.
Very smart, very smart in doing that. We should emphasize that so far we have not received any reports of any major injuries. Now, I'm sure that there have been some injuries throughout the afternoon because of this, but we have not received any reports that there have been any major injuries, no major accidents. This is not an act of terrorism. The mayor had emphasized that time and time again this afternoon in his news conference about an hour ago.
That the blackout was caused by a failure at a Manhattan power plant that destabilized the power grid as far as Canada. So the city is saying it started in Canada. Now there's a report from Reuters on the internet that is saying that it started here in Manhattan. So it's going to be some sorting out to do to figure out exactly where the problem started, why it started, and how we can avoid this problem in the future. But that's the conflicting reports that we're getting right now. But at any rate, it's going to be a mess for people getting home, as you heard Julie mention, and all the long distances that people have to go to the boroughs and the suburbs. So it's going to be a very long night. Guys?
I love it that everybody's pointing their fingers already at each other to say whose fault it was, and we haven't even gotten the lights back on yet.
I know.
Let's just concentrate on that for now.
Nobody wants to be the one to blame. Len was just talking to you about, it's 10 of 7 right now, so in about an hour and a half, it's going to start to get dark. What you're going to start seeing then around your neighborhoods, the city told us a little while ago, they're going to have the fire trucks, the fire department is going to have their trucks out with the lights, the police department are going to be out there with lights. If you have a flashlight, conserve the battery. Obviously, don't play around with it right now because it'll be dark around 8:30, 8:45. You're going to need those the flashlights, also the radios that you have at home. So, I mean, the city's doing everything that it can, but there's things that we all have to do as well to help out.
Make sure your refrigerator door isn't open and closing all the time because the food you have in there in the freezer will stay as long as you keep that refrigerator sealed. But just do your best to preserve whatever food you have.
The other thing, too, we've mentioned this to you a couple of times. Make sure that your air conditioner, the knob is turned off. Don't keep it on because the power is starting to come back on in parts of Westchester County, and that will eventually filter into the city here, but it's going to make it a heck of a lot easier if your appliances are not on, if the air conditioning knob is not on. So make sure that you turn that off. But open the windows, obviously, because you got to be able to get some fresh air.
If you want some kind of a signal that the electricity has gone back on and you have a little lamp or something like that, maybe you could, leave that switch on. But the big stuff, the air conditioning system, turn that off, and when your light goes back on, then you can flip your AC back on. But you'll be helping yourself and millions of other New Yorkers if you go to your air conditioning system and turn it off.
Now, what you're looking at right now is some video that was shot earlier today. You can see just traffic gridlock there. People just not really knowing where to go, coming to a standstill because the lights weren't working. Everybody's getting out and walking around. Len, I understand that you're with us again. You've got some updated information from the police department.
Yes, I do. The NYPD has issued what's called a level 4 mobilization, which essentially means that they're asking that all NYPD officers report to the command post or the nearest command post. All NYPD officers, this includes those who worked earlier today and say got off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're asking you to come back. This is a level 4 mobilization being declared by the NYPD. Now, the only exception to the level 4 mobilization is for those who are due to report at work, officers who are due to report on the midnight shift.
Among other CBS News, no indication of terrorism, though no one can say for certain just what did happen or just where it started. It's believed to be, as we said earlier, kind of waterfall effect, a domino effect, if you prefer that metaphor, with the giant grid system. That's what put these people on bridges having to walk home. Tonight, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg says power is beginning to be restored in the city, and he predicted, some would say boldly, but however you see it, he predicted that tomorrow we'll see in New York City business as usual. We'll have to see about that. Power company officials point out that, well, the power may begin to come on in some sections of places like New York. It's already beginning to come on in some sections of Connecticut and some sections of Ohio, but they point out that in the past, to get full power restored everywhere, sometimes usually takes hours, perhaps long hours. Here's the fact. Nobody knows when all of the power will be back on everywhere, although the early indications are that some power is beginning to come on in at least a few places. We're going to go back now to Scott McFarland of WOIO-TV in Cleveland, Ohio. He joins us on the telephone with an update on the power situation in Ohio.
Going to return by 9 p.m. tonight. This is the prediction from Long Island Power Authority Chairman Richard Kessel. He says, and this is his explanation, it's interesting, Long Island is so isolated from the rest of this region's power grid that he expected the power could begin to come on parts of Long Island a little earlier than the 11 o'clock predicted by Con Ed. That would be around 9 o'clock. That's what he expects. Power Authority is going to have restart plans in a specified order, beginning at plants in Island Park and Port Jeff, according to a contingency plan that was drawn up, they say, Mr. Kessel says, for just these sorts of emergency.
Bill, Catherine Russell with the Red Cross is on the line. Ms. Russell, how are you? Ms. Russell?
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
The traffic here in White Plains is moving fairly smoothly. Now, as I'm sure you have reported, this was a problem that began with a failure, a cascade failure that began with the electrical grid in the Niagara Mohawk area in upstate New York, and just knocked out power through much of the Northeast. In areas that we've seen, power is out. Stores that are open are trying to get rid of as many perishable items as they can. The milk, the ice cream, bottled water is a big seller, as you can imagine, with temperatures hovering in the high 80s with high humidity. Now, of course, in a situation like this, when power is lost, air conditioning is lost, probably at the worst time. There are fears for the health of the elderly, the ill, and so far what we've seen is there's been a sort of a level of cooperation that you can see here on the streets. People are not panicked. They are moving with caution, but no one appears to be frightened or concerned. Right now, this seems to be a major inconvenience, and with news slowly coming in that power is slowly coming back in pockets of the Northeast. We even heard in pockets here in Westchester County. The mood from what we can see is people are trying to maintain themselves, they're trying to stay calm, and trying to just to get through the balance of this evening. Jury?
Okay, Robert, thank you very much for that report. And Robert is in White Plains for us this evening. Earlier we spoke with Tracy Everson. She told us that the Red Cross had opened the Westchester County Center as a cooling off center, as you will, for people that don't have air conditioning and people that need to cool off and people that may be stuck in the city of White Plains. Lots of people do reverse commutes, you know, and with the trains not going, there are people that could be stuck in Westchester, not just the reverse, as we're seeing in New York City.
Now we should point out again
again, that Metro North service is still down. If you are expecting a loved one coming back from Manhattan, it is going to take some time. Hopefully you have connected with that person to find out that they're okay, but expect that there will be a major delay in that person getting home tonight. A major inconvenience is how Robert Wolf explained it, and if you saw that shot, White Plains at this time of day is usually bustling with people in cars or on foot headed home or getting to White Plains, and it was a ghost town.
It was a ghost town. Between the stores and the trains and the county office building and the courthouse and everything, it's bustling well into the evening, and we didn't see a car going by on that last live shot.
No, it's not. Now, time now is 6:58. We are told that Governor Pataki will be having a news conference, and we will bring you that live as that becomes available. Stay with us here on News 12 Westchester. If you are one of the lucky ones getting power restored, tune in and keep it here to News 12 Westchester. We will provide you as much information as possible. We will get it to you as soon as possible. That is why we are here.
Absolutely. Just a quick recap for you this evening. At about 4 o'clock, 10 after 4 to be exact, a major blackout hit the Northeast. It began throughout the region, hitting New York and Stamford, Albany, Westchester County, Niagara Falls, Toronto, as far west as Detroit and Cleveland. Con Ed is working to determine specifics. It appears that it all started somewhere near the Canadian border with New York State, and it will take some time for all of the power to come back throughout the region. The good news is that power is slowly starting to come back. Many areas in Westchester County have their power back. Yonkers, Buchanan, it's coming back slowly. It's been a long night. We'll update for you throughout the night.
This is a News 12 Westchester special report.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jory Tatsuma.
And I'm Suzanne Colucci. Thank you for joining us tonight. Many of you are well aware by now, most shortly after 4 o'clock, a major blackout hit the region, hit the Northeast. It spread from New York, Connecticut. They believe that it all started up toward the Canadian border with New York, and Con Ed is working well into the evening and well into the night to determine exactly what caused all of this.
Now, we should tell you that Governor Pataki is about to hold a news conference in just moments, so we will get that to you as soon as that becomes available. But just to recap the situation, we'll go to News 12 Westchester's Grace Noon in the newsroom. Grace.
Well, this certainly is an event that is unfolding as we go along. As you said, the power is slowly being restored to some of the communities throughout Westchester. We understand that police and fire departments throughout the county have been responding to numerous calls about power outages, but so far we have not been made aware of any major incidents, which is good to hear. Traffic is flowing on some of the roadways throughout the county, as you can see here, but the request from the county is if you do not need to drive, please stay home. They only want necessary vehicles out on the roadway. Police who are off duty today, some have been called, they've all actually been called in just to help with this situation, since the traffic lights are just not working. Now, the power problems have affected the trains into the city and out of the city. If you're waiting for a loved one to come home, you may be waiting a while. Now, this is a live picture that you're seeing right now in White Plains, and there you can see that there's no real traffic to discuss at all, which is a good sign. That's what we want to see. We want to see the roads opening just in case an emergency vehicle needs to travel by. Now, if you do know someone, a family member, a friend who is stuck in Manhattan, as much as you may want to go out to help them, we've been asked by the Mayor Mike Bloomberg of New York City not to do that, to remain in your homes. Unfortunately, it may take a while for them to return home, but they will make it eventually. And once again, here in Westchester, we haven't had reports of any serious incidents, and that's the way the county would like to keep it. The Emergency Operations Center in White Plains is up and running just in case some type of other emergency arises. They will be able to handle it. So at this point, it is an inconvenience, but people are just asked to please remain home and just wait this one out. Back to you, Jury and Suzanne, now.
All All right, Grace, thank you very much. And if you're just tuning into us right now, blackout hits the region shortly after 4 this afternoon throughout New York, throughout much of the Northeast, well over into Detroit, Cleveland, up to Canada. Thousands of people without power, thousands of people fleeing out of New York City by foot. Scenes very eerily reminiscent of 9/11, but the word came very quickly after the blackout hit that terrorism was ruled out. Mayor Mike Bloomberg saying terrorism was ruled out. This appears to be just some type of power failure that began near the Canadian-New York State border. The exact cause, it will certainly take Con Ed some time to pinpoint. Here in Westchester County, off-duty police officers are out on the roadways directing traffic. The lights are out. The situation in Westchester, though, much calmer than many people might expect. And we're going to go right now to News 12 Westchester's Rob Hoyle, who's out for us in Yonkers tonight. Rob?
Blackout has really taken a lot of people by surprise. A lot of people coming up here to the A&P food store on Nepperhan Avenue in Yonkers are finding it's closed, and they really don't know where to go to get supplies that they might need, like water, batteries, or candles.
Walgreens, which is open 24 hours, they never close, but it's closed now. And
how are you going to get through this?
I don't know what I'm going, and I'm a heart patient. I go like, you know, really, and I live on 6th floor, no elevator working.
So far it's okay, but, you know, I know eventually by the end of the night I'm gonna need the milk to be cold and, you know, enough water for the kids.
Right, they say drink plenty of fluids. It's hot. You have no air conditioning right now. So you don't know what you're going to do right now, or what are you going to do? What's the plan?
No, I'm just trying to go around to see what I could find.
Okay.
I already got some candles, but I need the ice.
Many people tell us they've been driving around trying to find any store that's open where they can get some supplies, but so far say they have no luck, that everything just seems to be shut down. In Yonkers, Rob Hoyle, News 12 Westchester.
Thank you, Rob. That is a difficult situation for folks who have young children or who might have food in the refrigerator that might be spoiling by now.
Certainly.
A difficult situation. Now, Tracy Everson was standing by at our in White Plains at the Emergency Operations Center, and she had pointed out that the main concern for officials up there right now fuel deliveries for all the emergency generators. Robert Wolf telling us that 287 was basically jam-packed, people going nowhere fast, and the fuel delivery for generators is definitely a key issue. We here at News 12 Westchester, we've been on because of our generator, but I'd say about 10-15 minutes ago we got the official word that the power here at News 12 Westchester is back on, which is actually very good news for us.
Two hours later, it's back on for us. And just to recap a few other main points here in Westchester County. The Westchester County Airport is open. Indian Point is closed, as is the protocol in these type of situations. The airports in Manhattan are in fact open, but flights are certainly limited. And the main word that we've been saying all night is for people to stay off the roads. That's coming from all police, county officials. They want people to stay off the roads. In Westchester, people seem to be making an effort, certainly, to do that. It's a much calmer scene than the one that we've been watching in New York City throughout the evening.
And we were also told that the Liberty lines, the bus lines were running, so that's good news for folks who rely on the bus service there to get to and from where they need to go. We're also told that all officers, like you see here, the officer directing traffic on the Sawmill Parkway, officers on the Westchester County Police Force have been called to active duty. If you're off, you were expected to come in and act as human traffic lights, if you will. And a lot of the local police officers obviously staying overtime well past their shifts to, like this one here in Tuckahoe, that's Main Street, Tuckahoe. Things seem to be moving and running, and people are out on the streets, and police officers trying to make do with this very pressing situation. We've got John Goff on the phone from our Northern Westchester Bureau, he's our Northern Westchester Bureau reporter. He is standing by at Indian Point in Buchanan. John.
Yes, there really has been no major change in the last few minutes. The power is still on throughout much of Northern Westchester. It's starting to come back. We've got power in Peekskill also. We were getting reports of power back in Cortland as well, and we're expecting that it is gradually being restored throughout much of the area as we speak. The roads throughout here are basically calm. There's not much traffic on the roads at the moment. We're seeing a few cars and vehicles going past, but nothing as far as heavy traffic. I'm sure a lot of people are taking the advice to stay off the roads until everything settles down. But at this point here in Buchanan and northern Westchester, things seem to be starting to get back to normal. The question right now is how long it's going to be before they're able to refire Indian Point and get it back up and online.
Can you tell us what's the latest that you're seeing on the roads up there, and how do people seem to be coping with the situation? We're about 3 hours into it now. What can you tell us?
Well, with the power back on right now, there really isn't that much of an impact anymore. But while we were coming over and the power was out, really didn't seem to be all that much of a disruption. There was a little bit of traffic at some intersections because the traffic lights were out, most notably on the westbound side, routes 202 and 35, heading in towards the Cortland-Yorktown town line. But that's kind of normal even when the power is on for that stretch of road to get very congested. All the other traffic, even the eastbound traffic on those roads, including Route 6, which is a little bit further to the north of 202 and 35, the traffic was flowing smoothly. Only maybe 2 or 3 cars backed up at any intersection. A number of them had state police officers, state troopers directing traffic. Some of the local police departments were also directing traffic, but things were moving rather smoothly.
Okay, John, and just one last thing. Could you just recap for us the security around Indian Point just one more time?
Well, there really is the security around Indian Point is you have the armed security force from the energy from the company that owns Indian Point. You also have a number of National Guardsmen. We did see one National Guard Humvee patrolling, but they do also normally patrol out on the streets as well. So that was not a particularly unusual sight. There was no particularly unusual activity at the plant as we drove past on Broadway, and things seemed to be rather calm other than what you can see from the street, which really is not that much. There wasn't too much really of any note going on inside the plant.
John Goff, thank you very much for that. And we're just getting word that any off-duty police officers, please report to their precincts here in Westchester. The county's asking for all the help that it can get from police to help direct traffic. Many areas in Westchester County still without power. Some areas slowly starting to come back on. If you're watching us, your power is now back on. In Yonkers, most parts are back on. And for the most part, though, it's very scattered this evening after this outage that began about 3 hours ago.
From Buchanan, I think Yorktown, some folks there do have power. Let's go back to Tracy Everson in White Plains, standing by at the Emergency Operations Center. Tracy.
Up here on the street outside of the county office building. I've been downstairs watching the county respond to this emergency situation. We are in a state of emergency here in Westchester following, as New York State has done, as the governor has declared. Now, the most pressing need right now is in Mount Vernon. The hospital there, we are told, has lost its backup generator. It's a critical need. They have patients on life support, and they need to have some kind of an emergency generator brought there. Joining me now is Susan Tolchin. She's the chief advisor to County Executive Andy Spano. Andy Spano is up in Saratoga, we are told, on vacation. But Susan, what can you tell us about the situation in Mount Vernon in particular?
Well, right now we're working with Con Edison and with our own Public Works Department to see what kind of emergency generator we can get to Mount Vernon Hospital. But we have another situation also in Blythedale Hospital where they also are out of their emergency generator, and they too have children on life support there. So that's a very critical need, and we're working that out right now with them. Aside from the hospitals, and we're polling all the hospitals constantly to find out what issues and what problems they have, basically the county is handling the emergency very well.
On deck to cope with this situation, and those Atlas teams are deployed in areas where they would be most useful around the city. I'm particularly concerned about this scene we keep looking at. We're back live now with Chopper 4. This is the ferry terminal area, and we were told by the ferry folks they estimated 20,000 people there in a line that stretches from 38th Street all the way up to the 50s. So Amber Theo Harris is overhead, and Amber, What can you tell us about what you're looking at right now?
Chuck, the crowd just continues to be unbelievable. I've been watching this for about 3 hours now, and it seems that the crowd has not died down, even though the ferries have been working, have been continuously taking loads of people back and forth across the Hudson River, and you can see it is just people are just shoulder to shoulder trying to get onto these ferries. I saw the Spirit Cruise Lines helping out. They came over. They had a little bit of a bigger ship taking a whole bunch of people over, and they've been working as well. So we are getting people on the ground are getting some help from not just the ferry service, but from also other watermen and captains on the Hudson River. Now, I can tell you that West Side Highway, you can see that people are packed onto West Side Highway from about, I'd say, the 30s up to about the 50s. So that is a long stretch of roadway, and you can see that the cars are jam-packed on West Side Highway as well. Right now, the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel is closed. So this is the only way to get out of Manhattan, is to go up West Side Highway in your car.
Amber, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. We've got Governor Pataki in Albany right now. We want to listen to what he has to say. Let's go to the governor.
As of this time, we have reached out. I spoke with Mayor Bloomberg. We've reached out to other local and county emergency officials. There is no unmet request for assistance, and the people of New York are doing what the people of New York always do, and that is responding by helping each other, by working together, by responding with the courage and with the calmness that we expect from New Yorkers who are used to having to deal with situations not necessarily of this magnitude. I don't know the cause of the outage. I don't think anyone can tell you that at this point. We've heard reports that it was caused by a transmission problem originating in Ontario and Canada, but I can't verify that that is in fact the case. We have our emergency forces working overtime. We have a system where we can contact every single hospital and nursing home in the state, and all of them, as we speak, have power. There were 2 in Queens that needed power, and working with the city emergency management team was able to get them generation. We have the thruway rest centers are open, all of them on emergency power if people feel a need to pull over and stop and just go someplace else. We do have state police and National Guard on reserve if requested by any locality for assistance, but as I said, at this point there is no unmet request. The MTA has done a tremendous job. There were almost 600 trains, subways, Metro North, Long Island Railroad that were stranded when the power outage occurred. All but 6 have been evacuated. And it's just been a tremendous cooperative effort. New York City PD, Port Authority PD, MTA PD, local PD, and most importantly, as I said, the people of New York just helping each other. The effort to restore the power is immense and is being done statewide, but I am advised we cannot just independently of the Northeast grid begin to put significant parts of the state back on power. We have been working with the Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey grid. We have been with their ISO, independent system operator. We have been working with the New England independent system operator in the hopes that within hours, but I don't want to predict when, we will be able to see power begin to be restored in various parts of the state. I just want to urge people, if they do have power, or if they do get power back and they're watching this or listening on a radio, to disconnect all unnecessary appliances. We're obviously going to be dealing with an emergency for some time, and to the extent people can help by reducing their demand if they do have power, it will help us to restore power across the state as quickly as possible. Also, as is always the case, whether it's an ice storm or other emergency, if you are comfortable in your home and know that you're okay and your family's okay, look in on your neighbors, particularly if you have senior citizens or other people with special needs, to see if you can help them out in any way. Because the way we've always gotten through difficult times as New Yorkers is not just government working together at all levels, and we are, but it's been individuals helping individuals and staying calm and not just taking care of themselves, but seeing if they can reach out and help a friend, help a neighbor, help someone who might have greater needs than they do. I am extremely confident that just as we've been challenged in the past and come through with flying colors in a way that the rest of the country and the rest of the world have looked up to. So we will do it this time as well. We have challenges ahead of us, obviously, with the fact that the power will not be restored instantaneously, but we're going to meet those challenges. The government will be there, the local governments will be there, most importantly, New Yorkers will be there, and I'm confident we're going to come through this again, strong, shoulder to shoulder as New Yorkers. Questions?
Are you concerned when it gets dark, what might happen in populated areas like that?
I'll tell you, New Yorkers respond to crisis by helping each other and by acting responsibly. And I just believe that that will be the case tonight. We're prepared to help local governments. We're prepared to help the city. But I think New Yorkers are going to respond the way we always do, and that is to understand that a crisis is a time to help others. I don't want to give a number, but well over half the people of the state are without power. I don't want to put a number on it, but Bill, Flynn, what would you say is the number? Yeah, more than half. We don't have a specific number. 19 million population. A very significant percentage. Well, we don't know what the cause was, but it clearly shows that the grid system didn't work the way it's supposed to. We had this Northeast outage back, I guess, in the 60s, and it wasn't supposed to happen again. It has happened again. And there have to be some tough questions asked as to why. Part of the system did work well. The tripping of the power plants, as I understand it, as they have been disconnected and shut down, has gone exceptionally well. The power plants have not been disabled, have not been damaged. There was a report of smoke at a Con Ed facility in New York City. That was an anticipated part of an orderly shutdown. So we are unaware of any damage to the plants themselves. They did trip and become deactivated in an orderly and far better way than was the case in the 60s, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Governor, does this show the need for the siting law to be passed by the legislature?
With power, some communities are not right next door to each other, for example. Much of Albany has power, much of Colony does not.
A lot of it is simply dependent on the grid, on where the capacity to generate exists without jeopardizing the plant because of incompatibilities within the grid.